Hello, everyone, and welcome to Connecting with Kim. I'm your host, Kim Droege, and we are so glad you joined us today on Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network for another exciting episode where we bring you information about people, places, and things which we think will keep you up to date, informed, and living your best life in our little corner of paradise. And don't forget, you can always catch the audio of our show on Sun Radio 96.3 FM, as well as on your favorite streaming platform. I am so excited today about the show. Actually, I love every show I do, but I'm especially excited today because I have a great guest in the chair, and we are celebrating something I think is significant, and I know they do too. So let me introduce him. My guest today is Patrick Manteiga, who's the owner and publisher of the only trilingual newspaper in the United States, La Gazzetta. Welcome to Connecting with Kim.
Thank you for having me. It's great.
It's my pleasure. I'm so excited. So, as I said, we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of La Gazzetta being published. But before we start on that, I always like to give everyone at the top of the show a chance to share their journey in life thus far, because you just never know who's out there listening, and they will identify with something that you've experienced, or a school you went to, or a job you had, or whatever. And I think it's important.
Yeah, very good. Well, born in Tampa. I went to Jane Rushing's kindergarten, went to Sacred Heart Academy, St. John's Greek Orthodox, grew up in West Tampa. We had a house, had a little pool, everything was great, didn't have to do anything except my schoolwork. And then one day my stepfather decided that he wanted to buy a chicken farm. So when I was 14, we moved out to Antioch, Florida, and bought a farm with 57,000 laying hens. And I went from not having to do anything to having to feed 26,000 chickens a day. On the weekends, having to pick up eggs, catch hay bales that the people would throw at me when we were harvesting the 40 acres of hay that we had. And slop the hogs and feed the cows. So
your life changed dramatically.
it was a dramatic change, and
I'm guessing you really enjoyed that. I don't know.
you know, it was. I wish I could have given it to my children. It was a great way of growing up, a great way of letting you help your family significantly. You know, if you didn't do the work, you know, the bills didn't get paid, and it taught you a lot about having to get the job done, to be resourceful. But it was hard work, and it was 7 days a week, and there's no vacation. The chickens don't take a break. They need feeding every day. And so I went to Plant City High School at that time, and met a great girl there, Angie, and she was my prom date, and got married to her right after, and worked for a guy named Johnny Bothwell, and we did video productions and still photography, did it for the mobile home industry, worked for 150 different mobile home factories, and made short films on 3/4-inch tape for Chamber of Commerce's, for businesses and things like that. And then one day my dad asked me to go work for him, and so that's what I've been doing ever since. Since 1984, I've been working at the same place.
At La Gazzetta.
At La Gazzetta.
And you just celebrated, you told me before we went on air, 39 years of marriage.
39 years of wedded bliss.
So we want to congratulate you on that, because that is quite an accomplishment in this day and age.
I'm a lucky guy.
You are. And you married your high school sweetheart, right?
Yeah.
So even more.
Absolutely. Nobody thought that was a good idea at the
Yeah,
time.
I'm sure people are going to say, that's never going to last. Right, your family's going, that's never going to last.
No, don't get married at 19.
Yeah, right. So you went to work at La Gazzetta, and which is quite a departure from what you were doing before.
Yes.
It's still in media, but, you know, it's different. So let's explore that a little bit.
Well, started off selling ads for the newspaper, and did every job after that. I worked in the dark room, wrote, took photographs, helped build our first Macintosh system when Mac first came out. And over the years, I was able to learn at the elbow of my father as he interviewed people at his table at La Tropicana. My father was wrote a column, As We Heard It, which I inherited. And he got the newspaper from my grandfather, Victoriano. And so my father was great with people, and you know, I got the benefit of having a 20-year apprenticeship of watching him.
And he started, that newspaper is, the location is still the same as it was, right, in Ybor City.
Well,
Have you moved?
we're still in Ybor City. We've had 3 spots in our entire 100 years.
Okay.
Yeah, we started off in the back of Massachusetts Printing Company in 1922, which is between 13th and 14th Street on 7th Avenue. Then in the 50s, we moved to the La Bonifica building, which is at Palm Avenue and 15th Street.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the 80s, we moved to our present location, which is 33rd Street and 7th Avenue.
And so what I wanted to talk about also was 100 years of printing a trilingual newspaper. So I think we should share with folks why your father wanted to print a trilingual newspaper.
Well, start off with my grandfather. Mm-hmm. And my grandfather came to Tampa from Cuba in 1913, mm-hmm. And he had a job waiting for him at the Morgan Cigar Factory as a lector. The workers there, as cigar workers in all of the factories in Tampa, had the right to hire a person to read to them. And so they'd form a committee. That committee would hire the lector. They would program what reading material they wanted, and they would collect the money at the end of the week to pay the lector. And so my grandfather did that for a number of years. He also started writing for a couple of other newspapers before he decided in 1922 to start his own. Started off as a Spanish daily. We were 6 days a week with wire service from Spain and Cuba, and it was entirely in the Spanish language. Mm-hmm. And he did that, and my grandmother worked there, and my father worked there, and the rest of the family worked there. And in the 50s, after the boys got back from World War II, our community underwent a huge change. The Latin community of Ybor started to break up. People no longer wanted to have several generations in the same house. The men got back, they wanted to marry, go live in the suburbs, and the English became a dominant language of the second generation of Tampa Latins. Mm-hmm. And so in order to keep up with them, in order to not lose that readership, we had to adjust with it, and so we added English. And afterwards, the Italian community came to my father and my grandfather and told them that they had lost a lot of their heritage, mm-hmm. because Italian was a dying language to them. They had to learn Spanish to work in the cigar factories. Their kids were learning English in the schools, and Italian just was being lost because it wasn't written anywhere. And
right.
if you don't have a written language, it fades away. And so we started a page of Italian, and have been trilingual ever since.
Well, language is a living thing in general. I mean, I speak several languages, but and I've studied several languages in my life, but I also realize that if you don't use the language every single day or regularly in your life, it's not that it completely goes away, but your ability to recall it at a moment's notice is diminished, because it's a living thing. You know,
Right.
it's something it's part of your being. Mm-hmm. And I want to back up to for a second and make sure everyone understands that the lector in the cigar factories, because people are sitting there,
Right.
you've published pictures in La Gazzetta, rolling cigars, and the lector is standing sort of in the middle of the room, so to speak,
Sure.
on a platform, and the lector, kind of like the lector if you're, in churches, mm-hmm. is giving the news, right? Is sharing all day long with these people, or whatever time they're hired for, what's going on in daily life.
Sure, they would read news in the morning generally. In the afternoon, they would read a novel, mm-hmm. And they would serialize it throughout the week. And great lectors would sometimes draw audiences from outside the cigar factory, and a lot of times you would see photos or paintings of these people on blankets outside of the cigar factory, because all the windows would be open, listening to the lector, because you had to have a great voice. You had to have a booming voice that would carry, because you're reading to 100, 150 people at one time, mm-hmm. and there's no microphone there. You're just in the cigar factory, but it's very quiet. Mm-hmm. It was a quiet industry. There's no machines. It's hand-rolling cigars. The only noise was the sound of the knife rolling across the wood as you cut the wrapper leaf.
Amazing, and I love when you publish those pictures in La Gazzetta. And I, in the interest of full disclosure, I am a regular reader of La Gazzetta. I would never miss it. I have my little ritual of how I progress through the paper when I get it in my hands, and from my mother, who has the subscription.
Right.
And we both have our little ways of how we progress through the newspaper and read everything that. And I never. I mean, I page through the entire thing. I have my little rituals, but I page through the entire thing because I want to see the whole thing. And you publish publish, people should understand, you publish a lot of legal notices. And I would like to just cover that for people to understand why that is.
Yeah. Well, in the state of Florida, we progressed from posting a note on the courthouse door 100 years ago to publishing a newspaper. So if you had a notice on a tax increase, you had to publish in the newspaper. If you had a foreclosure, you had to publish in the newspaper. Now you have to publish things such as if you have a divorce and you can't find your husband or your wife, you have to publish in a newspaper, adoptions, and it's to notify people who might have an interest in what's happening that this is happening, and if you have an issue, you need to go to court on this date in order to express it. And we started publishing in the 50s. At that time when we changed the English language, we also asked the legislature to allow newspapers that had some English in them to allow them to have legal notices. It was the Gazzetta bill in 1955, and it was done for us because before that, if you had any Spanish language, you could not publish any legal notices, any foreign language in your paper at all. And so from that point forward, we started doing it, and it became a major part of our business in the 90s, and then a huge part in the 2000s. When all the newspapers had the recession in the middle of 2007, 8, newspapers went way down. I mean, you lost your bank clients, you lost your retail clients, the internet was taking away classified ads from newspapers, and it was a horrible time. And we had a client since the 70s, a little firm that did foreclosures, and we get 7 or 8 ads a week from them for all those years, but all of a sudden they became the largest foreclosure firm in the state, and we're getting 100 pages worth of foreclosure ads week after week because all these houses were in foreclosures.
Well, yeah, because it was a terrible time.
And all of a sudden, what was just a minor client turned into, everything for us.
Right.
And so we got more focused on legals, and it's great because it allows us the freedom and the ability to do what we really want to do, and that's to change the world, to write about government, to write about things that are happening, to try and improve our community, and having the financial freedom to be able to do some of those things is great.
It's very important, and I think just to even have a local publication, and we're saying local even though I know there are many people outside of Hillsborough County, within Hillsborough County and outside Hillsborough County, who have a subscription to La Gazzetta and read it regularly. I still think that having a local publication survive all those trials and tribulations that have come along throughout the years, and you're still publishing and you're still growing strong, I think that is like, bravo.
My father passed away in 1998, and I wanted to get the paper to 100, and we've gotten there. And so that's a large accomplishment for myself and for the ghost of my father and my grandfather. And
but you're staying right. Oh God, don't make me.
No.
But
like I said, it is a huge step. It is something that you attained, and now you get to find a new goal. But we got that goal taken care of, and so we want to keep writing. I'm still young. I still got it in me.
Well, just looking at your head of hair alone, And I know you get a lot of.
I got that from my father and my grandfather too.
And I know you wear a lot of hats, but I always say to myself, why in the world is he wearing hats when he has that incredible full head of hair, which most men would kill for today?
Thank you.
So I want to. What if you? Since you came to La Gazzetta, what do you think? What is the biggest thing you learned from being at La Gazzetta, being the owner and the publisher of it?
A few things that I've learned are that you want to approach things honestly. Be honest with your feelings. Be honest with your motivations. People try to claim being fair and balanced. I think you can be fair and unbalanced. I'm a liberal Democrat. I don't hide it. You won't.
You don't hide it.
I don't hide it in my writing, and I think Republicans appreciate it.
Absolutely.
They understand where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to say, oh, this is the right way. No, this is my way. This is what I believe. And so I think that people appreciate honesty. I also try to, I've also learned that there's a line that you don't cross. I don't want to attack people's families. I don't want to bring people's wives or husbands or sons and daughters into anything. If if it's not meaningful, if it isn't worthy of news, then keep it out.
Right.
I think that there are lines that we should draw, and I think just because you're elected to county commission or school board, that doesn't mean your whole life needs to be exposed every day. And I think that we've gotten a little too nasty on some of the stuff we do, and I want to stay away from that.
I couldn't agree more. And if you're just joining us now on Connecting with Kim, my guest in the chair today is Patrick Manteiga, who is the owner and publisher of La Gazzetta, which is which is here in Ybor City, but it's also the only trilingual newspaper published in the United States, and they just are celebrating their 100th anniversary, which I think is a tremendous accomplishment. So we were talking about the things you've learned since you took over at La Gazzetta.
Well, the other thing that my father taught me a long time ago is you can't make more than 50% of the people angry at one time, or you lose all your sources, and you got to protect your sources. And so I try to do all those things. I think that people appreciate it. I think that that's why we still have readers. The other thing is that we stay in our lane. I think many newspapers try to be everything to everybody. Mm-hmm. I'm okay with my niche. I'm okay if you don't read me. I'm happy if you do. But I don't need to get to every person out there. If you have an interest in politics, you have an interest in history, you have an interest in community, read me. If you, want stories about, what the latest movie star did, then that's not us.
No.
It's not us. We're not fluff, and we're not light. We're fairly heavy most of the time, but there is entertainment in it. But I want to be who I am, and I don't want to end up having to chase the internet, chase clicks. I think that that's a big problem with our news media nowadays. Is that in the old days, editors, publishers, reporters decided what the news was. Mm-hmm. Today, we let the internet decide what the news is.
We let the click decide.
Yes.
The click decides what the news is.
I watched TV this week, and I saw one of the major TV stations report on a missing dog. And I'm thinking to myself, we're in a 3.1 million, whatever it is, media market, and I saw on the morning news about a missing dog. That's silly. But it's a click-driven society, and so talking about dogs and cats and things like that get clicks. Talking about the latest project the city or county wants to do that's going to raise your taxes. It's going to make your house cost more, make your gas cost more. We don't talk about that anymore. No,
it's all about eyeballs on the screen, and I'm an individual that still appreciates having a printed newspaper in my hands. I like it. I like sitting there with either a coffee or an adult libation of some sort and reading. Well, you are not just involved in La Gazzetta, so I think that we ought to spend a few moments on some of the other activities and interests that you have.
Right. Well, one of my big projects is the Cuban Club. I'm the president of the Cuban Club, and I'm the president of the Circulo Cubano, which was the social club at the Cuban Club. And we are working to try and restore a 107-year-old building. It's a major contributing structure to Ybor City. Mm-hmm. It's got a great story and tells the story about mutual aid societies that were built here by workers to help them live their lives and provided them health care, provided them with a place to socialize, provided them a place to express themselves artistically and through sports. And these buildings are the surviving cathedrals of the working man, of them being able to take care of their lives. When I say working man, working women too. And
that's okay, I understand. Yeah, I wouldn't take an offense.
And so, saving this building's been a big thing. And so recently we've done about $3 million in restoration. We're currently working on $1.5 million in restoration, putting new windows in, new doors in, restoring old doors. And it feels really good because we're starting to make progress there. And that's a goal that I've set for myself, is to get this building done. And of course, you never get done, but pretty close to it. And so I think we're only a couple $1 million away. So
Only a
So
couple.
yeah, $2 million. We'll
And if you
find
feel
it.
like contributing, I mean, there you go. Just contact Patrick.
Cuban
I'm
Club
sure
Foundation, we'll take your money.
Yeah.
And then I'm on the Sports Authority, been appointed by the County Commission. The Sports Authority owns Raymond James Stadium. We manage the Legends Field. We hold some bonds for the Ice Palace, Amalie Arena, 3 public golf courses, and a bunch of amateur fields out in the county that are rented for Little League footballs and rugby and soccer and all of that. And so that's a great way of giving back to your community, and it's a great organization. And so, those are some of the things I'm involved in. Of course, I've got 3 grandkids and a wife, and so that rounds it out.
I know. I can't believe that you have 3 grandchildren. I'm like blows me away. Whenever I look at you, I always think of you as being like,
When you get married at 19.
I know. But I just don't think of you that way. But that's wonderful. I also want to talk about the fact that you just got back from Cuba.
Yes.
So, let's hear about that. I think that's
Cuba's
wonderful.
been one of my newspaper's crusades. In 2000, we were probably one of the first Spanish language newspapers in the country to advocate for ending the trade and travel embargo. And I made it a mission to understand U.S. policy towards Cuba, to understand the Cuban economy and issues regarding Cuba. And so my latest trip was one that I had scheduled before COVID, couldn't do it until now. And I wanted to see for my own eyes the trouble that Cuba is in, and they're having a horrible economic time down there, and people are really suffering. No cars on the street because there's no gas. Employment issues are a problem. My tour guide, I was his first tour in 2 years. It's still a beautiful country. It's still beautiful people, but it's serious issues, and U.S. policy is making a bad situation a lot worse. And so I wanted to understand that, and going down there helps me talk to people and get a better feel for it.
How many times have you been to Cuba?
About 15.
About 15. And I know I asked you before we went on air if you had relatives, and you said not that I know of.
Well, that's part of the U.S. Embargo against Cuba. My family never went to Cuba. My grandfather and father never talked about it. In fact, I didn't know I was Cuban until after my father passed away, because they claimed to be Spaniards because they didn't want to be identified as part of the Cuban exile community.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe that.
And so that never went back to Cuba with them, and part of that was U.S. policy. Had the U.S. policy not existed, I'm sure I would have gone with my father, and I'm sure he would have been able to point out where family lived, introduce me to people.
Sure.
That didn't happen, and so one of the victims of the U.S. embargo was my heritage and history in that country.
When you go to Cuba, are you staying in the Havana area, or are you branching outside?
Generally, it's Havana. A lot of times we're trying to meet with people who have a good understanding of what's going on in Cuba. And so while you meet with just general people, a lot of times, especially in the past, we would meet with government heads of certain parts of the government to understand their aviation system, their healthcare system, their education system, how they fund the arts. And you just can't get that from people on the street. It'd be like coming to Tampa and going into a bar and asking people about what's Tampa government like, how do you guys do these things? And they don't know, so you got to
Well, they'll offer an opinion, but they may not know.
You got to meet the mayor, you got to meet the city council, you got to talk to people like that to really understand the system. And so, my goal has been to understand the system.
Well, we only have a few minutes left, so I want to make sure that you offer up anything to our listening audience and watching audience that you want to share before we conclude this particular interview.
Well, I think that La Gaceta is a great Tampa tradition. We have something for everybody. If you are literate in at least one language, Spanish, Italian, or English, we've got something for you. I think you'll learn a lot about our community by reading La Gaceta, and I think that the history that we provide on a weekly basis will allow the newest resident to all of a sudden really appreciate what's going on here. We know why we like Tampa, but we don't know the reasons behind it. And part of it is the authenticity of Tampa, its unique culture, the Ybor City areas, the West Tampa areas, the fact that we're just not a sleepy southern town, we're an international town. And I think that by reading La Gaceta, you'll get to understand that and appreciate it.
And what I love also is that always on your cover of the La Gazzetta, you publish a photo from times past, which always features something interesting, an interesting place, an interesting group, some interesting folks. I love that because it's a glimpse back into the past. And I think one of the beauties of Ybor City is the fact that you can go to Ybor City and still see all this beautiful architecture. It's not being torn down and replaced with high rises and glass and steel structures, and it still has some kind of feel to it.
Yeah, so much of Florida has been torn down because a lot of Florida wasn't that old.
Right.
And therefore, south of St. Augustine, a lot of it's all been removed. And so luckily we preserved Ybor City. And now we have a lot of rules to make sure that it will be preserved. And so, we think that understanding your community is really a part of being able to make wise decisions.
Absolutely.
About it.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for being my guest today on Connecting with Kim. My guest has been Mr. Patrick Manteiga, who is the owner and publisher of La Gazzetta, the only trilingual newspaper left in the United States, and a treasure, celebrating their 100th anniversary, which I think is amazing in today's markets of media. And so thank you so much. And that's all we have time for today, but I want to thank you for tuning in to Connecting with Kim on Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network. I hope you'll come back next week for another exciting episode. You can always catch the audio on Sun Radio 96.3 FM and on your favorite streaming platform. And again, our mission, our goal, my love, the reason I do this is so that I can bring you information about people, places, and things that will keep you informed and up to date and living your best life here in our corner of paradise, and it certainly is that. And I want to thank you for joining us today. So long, farewell, see you next week.